understand exactly where we could be, where we want to be, and actually meet individuals like the two phenomenal individuals that we have here, Minister Jessica L. Johnson and Reverend Dr. Nicole Martin, who are going to take us through this particular journey session, which is titled Pain, Peace, and Purpose Thriving Through Trauma. We are living in a moment of COVID. There is a true depression going on inside of our community, not just economic, but emotional. And with peace and purpose, our entire focus is being able to heal, help mind, body, and soul. So, welcome, Lace. How are you?
Hi.
Hi, we're good. Thank you so much for having us.
Oh, no problem. I'm going to start with you, Miss Johnson, and then I'm going to hop out. For all of you who are out there, Miss Johnson is a true community servant, and I want to thank you for being a part. That was long introduction, and obviously, if you don't know about the ministry that Reverend Doctor Nicole Martin has, we want you all to support her. She does have a book, Made to Lead, empowering women for a ministry and leaning in and letting go. I want you to know there's also a devotional available to you also. Hopefully during this moment, Ashley will share and pull up the covers so that we can let the community know that there are healing tools that are available for healing. So for me, I just want to thank you both for coming to this journey session. Peace, pain, and purpose, thriving through trauma. So enjoy, ladies and gentlemen, and be prepared to be healed, to be inspired, and to be connected with the word of God from both these young ladies. And we are witnessing and believing that no matter what universal spirit you believe in, it is present here at peace, purpose, and thriving through trauma. Thank you so much, both of you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
And Martin, I just want to say thank you for allowing us this space. So many times we are kind of inundated with um, opportunities to learn about how to output, but there are a few times when people create sacred spaces for us to kind of have time for introspection. So I just want to give a shout out to you and to Melinda and all the Rolling Out staff for just creating these journey sessions. We hope that this time isn't so much a time to kind of explore answers, but more so a conversation about the questions that we have and maybe get tools for the journey. And then it's interesting also that we kind of deem these journey sessions because we know that often we kind of think about destinations and we don't often realize that true fruit and kind of the true essence of who we are becoming is in the journey. So thank you. Thank you for the space. I'm Jessica Johnson, as Munson said. I'm here in Nashville, holed up in my parents' house, and just like many people, experiencing a wonderful, wonderful 2020, a time of clarity and a time of hardship and a time of trauma, and yet a time that's fruitful and I'm sure will be one to look back and remember on as something that changed our lives for the better. And I get the fun privilege of being here and having this conversation with one of my best friends, my sister, Reverend Dr. Nicole Martin. And it's funny, it's kind of unfair because if we weren't having this particular audience or interchange, we'd probably be talking anyway, probably later tonight after the kids are in bed. But
Right.
so, but I am just excited to just be here with you. You're my sister, but you're also this brilliant like mind. And I have to do the whole bio thing. I have to because you're just brilliant.
Great.
So I'm going to go ahead. I'm not going to read it all because it would take up most of our time, but I will say that Reverend Dr. Nicole Massie Martin is the founder and executive director of Soulfire International Ministries. She serves also as the vice president of church engagement and the executive director of trauma healing with the American Bible Society. She is a former management consultant with Deloitte and also previously served as the executive pastor, executive minister at the Park Church in Charlotte. She currently serves with the staff at Kingdom Fellowship AME Church in Maryland. She teaches courses on leadership and ministry development at Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary and is the author of 2 books, one of which I have right here. She has been inducted into the prestigious Martin Luther King Jr. Board of Preachers at Morehouse College. She is a graduate of Vanderbilt University, where she that's triple, 1, 2, 3, majored. She earned a master's in divinity from Princeton Theological Seminary, her doctor of ministry from Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary. She lives currently in Maryland with her darling husband, Dr. Mark Martin, and her 2 beautiful daughters, Addison and Josephine, who may make an appearance.
Let's pray not.
Anyway, more than anything, she is a child of God. I can witness and attest to the fact that she's living this thing out. She's not just preaching about it. We share in this journey together. And during this COVID time, for me, has been traumatic hell.
Yeah.
If I can just say it. And she's been a guiding light, an anchor, I guess the pointer to an anchor during this time for me. So I'm just excited that we can invite everybody else, whoever might be out there, into our conversation tonight as we explore this topic of peace and purpose and pain and thriving through trauma. Nicole, thank you for carving out this time to be with us tonight. And because I know your schedule, it's more like a chiseling out the time. It's not carving, it's chiseling out time to be with me tonight. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Jessica, for having me. I love you and your whole family. G and Melinda and Tanya. I'm just so honored to consider you all part of my family and to be part of yours.
Yeah. Thank you. And so I want to kind of start by kind of setting the stage. We all know the hell, and I don't really use words like that, but it's kind of hard to not with this particular year. It's been kind of totally unexpected. I guess it's hard to expect any year, and I think we're kind of pompous, and if we believe we can kind of predict what is going on. But I would be comfortable enough to say that nobody expected 2020 or any year of their lives to be like the one that we've had so far. So I want to kind of take just some time to just talk about how we take this time of such trauma, this painful time, and turn it around and flip it on its head. And see how we can take some nuggets and kind of help people understand the concept of thriving through trauma. I like to start by asking just, how do you define trauma and what role it plays in our lives?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And you're right, this year has been traumatic for many of us. And it's not just 1 or 2 or 3 areas where we experience this trauma. It feels like a tidal wave of trauma. And at the core, trauma is, in effect, a heart wound. At the Trauma Healing Institute, which is a group that American Bible Society is a part of, we describe trauma as a heart wound. And a heart wound is any experience that causes intense fear, horror, helplessness, intense terror, any event that kind of shapes you, that wounds you in an effect. And in the same way that you think of a physical wound may happen in a moment, but it takes time to heal. Physical wounds may need surgery. Physical wounds may be visible. Some of them may not be visible if you can cover them up, but they're still there. And many physical wounds leave us different. The same thing happens with a heart wound. And a heart wound is when there is any event, either by your own hands or happening to you from someone else, or experienced from someone else's life, which is what we call secondary trauma. It's any wound that injures you in a way that it must take time to heal, that can be concealed but is still there. It's a wound that, if it's left untreated, can fester and become infected. This is what trauma is. And when we think about events that fall in the category of trauma, we're talking about death of a loved one, loss of a job, or loss of a friend, or loss of a relationship. Betrayal falls into the category of trauma. Abuse of all kinds, sexual abuse, domestic violence, child abuse, and on and on and on. And now enter 2020, where 40% of all Americans have experienced some significant loss. When African Americans, more than 80% of African Americans have experienced the loss of a loved one. You and I have been there. We've both done the virtual funeral. You have experienced deep, deep pain. So many of our friends, people of color, experiencing deep, deep loss, deep pain. And that's not all. Then we have the incidences of racial trauma. And those kinds of traumas in the news trigger pre-existing trauma. So when you see a Black man die on television, it reminds you of when you were stopped or pulled over. It reminds you of when your loved one, an incident happened with your loved one. I found myself in conversations with friends who were thinking about uncles who were lynched in the 20s and 30s and sometimes the 60s. So there's this ripple effect of trauma. And then there are the triggering moments of trauma. And if we're not careful, these heart wounds can leave us kind of open, vulnerable, in need of deep care and healing and solace. And this is what I think is important for us to talk about. We have to be able to name the trauma that we've gone through. Even for people who have not lost a job, we know someone who has. For someone who has not lost a loved one, we know someone who has. There's a ripple effect of trauma that leaves all of us as a people feeling vulnerable, exposed, and in need of care and healing.
Do you think that we as a people, and when I say we this time, I'm saying Black people,
Yeah,
do you think that we some way have normalized pain in a way that
absolutely.
kind of mask our trauma?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny you said that. We did a study of trauma. This was pre-COVID, and we did an assessment of people of all races. And the data came back showing that African Americans did not identify trauma in their lives in the same way as their white counterparts. So when you dig a little deeper, you realize it is normalized trauma, that we anticipate a level of trauma, so much so that when someone looks at us a certain way, when someone says something to us in a certain way that triggers something else, we have learned how to stuff it, how to rise above it. We've even given ourselves pats on the back when we move beyond it and act like it's not there. But if we're not careful, we perpetuate generational trauma. And we teach our children to ignore the actual pain that they go through. And then we're not passing on generational healing, we're passing on generational woundedness. And we're
Yeah,
teaching each generation to be even more wounded than the generation before.
right. How do we undo like the sense of feigned strength that
Yes.
is like keep on keeping on, baby, just pray and the Lord will make it all right? Like
Yes.
how do we kind of hold these two truths? The one thing that you told me during a time of trauma is like it's okay not to be okay, because the
Yes.
performance part of me
Yes.
was like, okay, I understand this hurts so bad, but I gotta get through it.
Yes.
I gotta be strong. I gotta heal. I can't show weakness. I like, how do we allow ourselves the freedom to hold two truths at once and be
Mm.
okay with that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think at a certain point, most of us recognize that we've been holding our breath just before we pass out. So I think, we don't question the strong Black man or strong Black woman motif until we're about to pass out,
Mm,
until we come to the end of ourselves, until we come to the end of our rope. And we realize if I keep this up, I will die. There's something powerful about a collective breathing. The I can't breathe that we heard from Eric Garner, from even George Floyd. The idea of not being able to breathe was a triggering moment for the Black community, because part of this perfectionism, part of this perceived strength is a holding of your breath. It's just hold your breath and get through it. Hold your breath and don't let them see you cry. Hold your breath and don't let them see you weep or mourn or grieve. But at that certain point, you realize you've been holding your breath for so long, you're no longer who you were. And at a certain point, we have to make a choice to say, I want to breathe. I want to live. And part of that desire to live comes with a gift of being able to exhale. You remember that book and the movie, Waiting to Exhale? Black women loved it. We loved it because it was a way of saying, Black woman, stop holding your breath. Stop holding your breath, waiting for the right man or waiting for the right job or waiting for everything to get better, and start breathing right now. And for people of faith, you start to recognize, not only if I keep holding my breath, I won't make it, but if I try to do it all by myself, I won't make it. So there's a sense in trauma that pushes us to the brink where we realize I have to breathe in order to make it. And breathing means I have to come in contact with my pain. And that's, I think, where we fall short sometimes, because it's often easier to pretend like the pain isn't there and to avoid the pain than it is to face that pain and to deal with it. And only then will we realize there is a source, there is a power. For me, it is Jesus. There is a source, there is a power that allows us to tap into a strength that is beyond our own. And then we don't have to hold on to a strong man or strong woman. We can hold on to a stronger power that helps us to get through these things.
Yeah. So what would you say to the person that says, I'm struggling to translate, to transform this pain to a place of healing?
Yeah. Well, the good thing is, any counselor, any grief counselor, any good pastor will tell you, as you started off today, that grieving and healing is a journey. It's a process. And if there's any word of grace that helps us to exhale, it should be that word process. And the process and the journey does take time. So for people who feel like, how in the world can I do this? The fact that they're asking that question means they're starting right now. We talk about sometimes trauma as an arc. There's a trauma arc where you start off with naming your point of suffering. And I want to say that there's such power in naming your suffering, not just as an individual, but collectively. I was reading an article the other day that said that Black women suffer the highest amounts of trauma during COVID-19. And that's, for 101 reasons that we can all unpack together. For single Black women, it's the stress of isolation. For married Black women, it's the stress of having to deal with everything and trying to keep your marriage together. For married Black women with children, it's trying to keep your kids from, trying to keep yourself from throwing everything out because your children get on your nerves. For Black women who aren't married, who have children, it's just trying to keep yourself alive. I mean, the stressors are layered and layered, but it also said that Black women are more likely to have communities of healing because they're more likely to know that they need a sister, they need a community. So as we recognize our pain, we can lament, we can grieve, we can mourn, we can vent. And when we have a community to do that, oh man, it just takes us to whole new levels. So we start by naming that pain. And then when we name that pain, we can grieve that pain by ourselves with other people in community. And as we grieve that pain, we can journey with that pain to a drop off. This is the place where it's hard, but it's critical. And some people try to drop their pain off without naming it, which is almost impossible. It's a falsehood to think that you can just brush something off that hasn't been owned. But once you name it, then you can bring it somewhere. For some psychologists, they tell you, you can write it down and put it in a box. You can write a letter. For those who are people of faith, you can give it to God in whatever way your tradition allows you to. Bring it to the cross. You can lay it on the altar. And then there's the human understanding that grief, like any journey, is a cycle. There are days where you've dropped it off and you feel good, and then that next moment you pick it right back up.
Mhm.
That's where this owning of your suffering comes in, because when you own that suffering, then you can call a friend and say, today I ain't got it. Yesterday I was great, not today. I need you to send good thoughts and healing and prayers my way. And that too becomes a part of your healing journey.
I'm not gonna make it.
I'm not gonna make it. I can't breathe. I can't today.
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
Okay. So as we kind of go through our like movement here, like
Yeah.
how do we know when we have peace? And I
Mm.
know this is an odd question. And I realize that it's not like a destination. So it's
Yep.
not like you're going to get to a place of peace and there you go.
That's right.
But how do we know when we have peace and
Mm.
how we measure it?
It's a great question, because peace, the moment we begin to measure or quantify peace, I think it's the moment it escapes us.
Mm,
If you're thinking about this there are a number of ways to think about peace. Martin Luther King tells us that peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is the presence of justice. So there is peace when things are reconciled, when the balances are becoming even. We have peace when we feel like we don't have to strive as much, or we don't have to fight as much. Not that things aren't hard, but there's peace even in the struggle when you know you're fighting for the right thing, when you're pressing toward the right thing. So there's an element of peace that comes from the process of knowing what you're fighting for and recognizing what side you're on and why you're doing what you do. I think when we think about activists who operate in peace, they don't stop doing what they're doing. They don't stop the fight. They press forward in that fight. Their peace comes in knowing I'm doing the right thing. And if I die in this, I'm dying on the right side. I'm dying in the will of God. I'm dying in a sense of fighting for what is good. So I think there's that layer of peace. Then there's another layer of peace that comes from being a part of something that's larger than yourself. I heard this really interesting phrase. I was on an interfaith panel discussion, and one of the Muslim scholars talked about what it looks like to have peace for her. And she said there was a poet that had a 3-line poem. It says, I was ripened. I think it was, I was planted, I ripened, I was consumed. I'm
ooh,
probably butchering this poem, but
ooh,
the gist of it is that peace comes from knowing I have matured to the point of being consumed by God, consumed by purpose, consumed by something larger than myself. And as long as I live the consumed life,
mhm,
then I know I have peace.
mm.
And then you have a Christian perspective that says that peace is that which can be given to you and never taken away.
Yeah, Jesus
Peace
bless
is
you.
that,
Yeah.
my peace, Jesus says, I've given to you, not as the world gives,
Mm-mm.
but as I give to you.
Mhm.
So that's why I say we can't pursue peace. We have to understand, accept, be enveloped by peace, be consumed by peace, which really means there's a letting go of the things that don't give us peace so that we can operate in that peace. The peace that leads us to justice, the peace that leads us to a life consumed, and the peace that leads us to that which can never be taken away.
Yes.
It's complex, but
It
it's
is.
worth it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that yeah.
Yeah.
That's it has to be like something that we kind of carry on us with like a
Yes.
garment, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
So
And it is, there's a part that I've been wrestling with, because in my younger journey, I would plead for peace.
yeah,
Please, I need peace. I need peace. And then there was a shift where I recognized that if I've already been given peace,
yeah.
then it is my duty to walk in it, to claim it and own it, not to plead for it, but to embrace it and accept it. So I
Mhm.
shifted from praying and pleading and asking and begging for peace to declaring it. I have peace.
Yeah.
I have this. I have peace. I will walk in peace. I will operate in peace. I will move forward in peace. And I believe that's the kind of peace our ancestors had, even when all hell was breaking through in their lives and their loved ones were dying and they could not marry and they could not be free. Even when the papers were signed, there was a certain no. You're not going to take my peace, because I have a peace that you didn't give me. and you cannot take away.
Right. So in 2020, with all of its mass unemployment and traumatic layoffs, COVID-19, mass deaths,
Yes.
how have you maintained your peace?
By talking to Jessica. By talking to my friends. I think it is easier for some to manage and to have peace, and I put myself in this category, when you understand the value of community. And I mean, I say lightly, it's by talking to you, but I mean with my whole heart that there's a communal understanding that gives us a bit of grace. As I'm fighting in the mornings, trying to get my girls on virtual school at 9 a.m. and trying to jump on my call at 9 a.m. and making sure that Mark has his space to do his call at 9 a.m. And then we have a quick break, and no, you cannot have a snack for the 18th time. And yes, I am fully present on the Zoom, even though a 5-year-old's running in the background. And, when all of this is breaking through, there is peace in knowing I am not the only one going through this. There are millions of parents trying to figure this out. There are millions of married couples trying to figure out how to work from home. There are millions of families just like mine trying to figure it out. And there is a communal understanding that comes from that. And that is why I say, and I don't mean this lightly, I mean this as a sincere step. One of the ways that we understand and heal from our trauma is by naming it and lamenting together. There's been we've seen so many great articles and blogs and posts that allow us to say, we're in this together. And it makes us chuckle when we saw all the memes of people's faces and, all the little things that say, my favorite was like right around every night around 6 p.m. Every night around midnight, I look at the clock and it says 6 p.m. It's like, that is how I feel. It feels like midnight, but it's really 6 p.m. So there's a collective ownership of this trauma that helps to give me peace. And even though my congregation of faith is not meeting during this time, I have learned how to lean on the prayers and the faith of others to help kind of buoy me to the place where I need to be, even when I can't get there myself. And that has been very helpful. And I've continued with counseling. I believe in therapy. I believe in counseling, especially for the Black community. I believe in the process of being able to pour out your pain and have someone help you parse it, sort through it, figure out what's going on. And I believe in the disciplines that we need in our lives to make it, disciplines of silence whenever we can find it, disciplines of lament and confession, disciplines of praise and gratitude, which all of science tells us changes the shape of your brain, that even in 2020, we have something to be thankful for, and that carries you through. All of these things matter, and they all play a role.
Yeah. So I'm curious as to how you feel all these things relate to purpose. Because I can imagine that during this period, people are kind of recalibrating
Yes.
their view of their purpose in life. Like,
Absolutely.
the things that you spent so much energy at building and, working for, all kind of came to a halt. And then I think many of us really stopped and said, what am I doing?
Yep.
What have I
Yep.
been doing? So how do you think, like, putting peace and pain in their right place and then offering an opportunity for healing, real healing, kind of helps us recalibrate our purpose as we move forward into the rest of 2020, whatever it may bring, or 2021. I don't want to like rush our lives away because I think that there's still yet hope. But talk a little bit about how we can use this pain and this pursuit of peace to further kind of actualize our purpose in life.
Yeah. That's such a great question. And even the way you framed it kind of lends itself to an answer, that as we recalibrate our pain and our peace, that in the midst of that, there is purpose. As you were talking, the story that came to mind is one that's found in the Jewish and the Muslim and the Christian texts of scripture. In Genesis, it's the story of Jacob wrestling with God. It's a beautiful story. And, Jacob is named by definition meant trickster. And so, the story, Jacob is in the wilderness because he's fearing for his life and he's afraid of his brother and he fears he's going to die. And just when he felt like everything was going to break loose because they'd sent all the gifts over, he had nothing left to do, to give. And then the angel comes and wrestles with him. And he wrestles with him so much so that the angel realized, we're going to be literally doing this all night. The angel touches Jacob's hip and breaks it, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And Jacob says to the angel, I will not let you go until you bless me.
Mm-hmm.
And the blessing of the wrestling and the blessing of the brokenness is a new name, which creates a new purpose, which sets forth a new generation and a whole new process that was different from anything that could have happened before.
Yeah.
And I think as we think about trauma and we think about trauma as a heart wound, the woundedness makes us different. And that difference can make us more callous, more afraid, more fearful, more timid, more reluctant, or that woundedness can heal us in a way that we're not the same as what we used to be. But we walk in a different way, but we got a newness about us. For Jacob, it was a new name, which led to a new purpose. And I do wonder in this season of 2020, with all of us experiencing this mass brokenness, what will our new name be? I mean, the election of new presidents allows us to cultivate a new national identity. And for a lot of people, that is really, really exciting. But what will our personal identities be? And I think the only way we can do this is if we refuse to let 2020 go without a blessing. I feel that thing, man. Let me tell you something. We are not going to get to know New Year's Eve with me walking into 2021 the same. Oh, no. 2020, let me tell you something. I will not leave this year without a blessing. I refuse to go into 2021 the exact way that I entered January 2020. I was naive, some would argue, in January 2020. Not so in January 2021, because this brokenness is healing in a way that it will leave me different. And like Jacob, I'm going to walk into 2021 with a limp for sure. I will have a limp or one or two. I'll have a scar or a bruise. I will not look the same way that I looked before or walk the same way or talk the same way. But that difference in me will turn into a blessing. And the question I think we need to ask is, how will this change in me show itself in the next generation? And I'm not talking about your kids. I'm talking about just the way that you are, the way that 2020 broke you. How can we turn that brokenness into a blessing? And that's where the question of purpose comes in. Because if you are discovering more about yourself, and all of us should be in this season, then it means that you have a new name. You have a new way of being, and now you have something new to pass on to the next generation.
Yes. Where does our faith play a role in the health from trauma?
Oh man. I'm very biased with this question because I know for a fact I could not live without faith in knowing that there was someone greater than me, some greater purpose, power at work. And, my heart grieves because I have friends, even some family who don't have faith. They are not agnostic even. They don't believe that there's a God. They feel like it is what it is and life is what it is. And there's a certain hopelessness that comes from that. There's a certain personal accountability that comes from that. And often when you sift through it, when you sift through what happened to your faith, it's often a moment of pain. It's a betrayal from a person of faith. It's a broken expectation from a person of faith. It's a bad experience, a painful experience that happened in the context of faith that needs healing. And rather than face that pain and go through that healing and find a God above it all, sometimes we just resolve to say, well, I'm never going to go down that road again. So for me, faith is the ability to see what can't be seen. And there's scripture that kind of attests to this, and to know that there is more beyond this than I can see right now. It's because of faith that I can say what I see with my eyes is not all there is. And that gives me hope that just because I see job loss or hospitalization or pain doesn't mean that that's all there is. Because faith allows us to recognize human frailty. Faith allows us to recognize the fallenness of human nature, of our flesh, to recognize that we are fallen, broken people, and we literally can't, even our best works can't do it on our own. So I think that it is faith that carries us through these times to recognize you don't have to have all the answers because there is an answer beyond you. You don't have to have all the healing because there is healing beyond you. And you don't have to worry or carry it all because there is one who can carry it for you. And that's where faith steps in for trauma, to remind us you don't have to do this by yourself. And that's a gift. It's a blessing.
Yeah. And I think that that's kind of the key and the catalyst to thriving.
Yes.
That's how we kind of move from understanding we're living in this space of duality to actually kind of moving past survival to thriving.
Yeah.
Nicole, we have some questions.
Great.
So what about, let's say, I'll take this one. How does prayer help us to heal?
Oh, man. Okay, so on the very scientific basis, and I have a book over here. It's called Hope Rising. It's a great book. It's a secular book. It's written by an atheist and I believe a Jewish gentleman. Don't quote me on that because I can't remember their last names. But the point is, this is not a Christian book. And in Hope Rising, talks about the role of small things like the work of the mind when you set your mind on something higher or larger than yourself, and when you begin to envision hope. That when you set your mind on something a lot larger than yourself and you begin to envision hope, there are physiological changes that happen in your body that bring healing. So now let's take that very scientific fact and transfer that to prayer. Prayer at its core is conversation with the holy. It is conversation with God, with however you view God to be. And when we begin in our minds, whether we pray in our minds or if we pray with our mouths, when we begin to set our intention, set our hearts, set our minds on that which is above, then we get a different perspective. And science tells us there's a physiological change when I pray. That when I meditate, when I set my mind on God, it is not about my words. It is not about having the perfect words. It's not about praying like your grandfather prayed. You and I know those prayers, Lord God of Isaac, God of Jacob. I mean, those are serious prayers.
They work. They have.
Yes, they work. They work.
Yes.
But they can also create this insecurity when you don't know how to pray like that.
Yeah, no.
So
You can't get the morning board thing right.
It's the cooling board. It's a
Oh,
cooling
the
board.
cooling board. Oh, morning. What is the morning part?
I don't know, but
Anyway. Ruined
See?
it.
I know.
I failed.
And I remember the tongue cleaved to the roof of my mouth. I remember that.
Yeah.
Yes. So on the question of prayer, though, prayer is the setting of your mind on that which is holy. And when you begin to set your mind on God, when you begin to set your thoughts, your heart, your intention on God, when you begin to exercise spiritual disciplines like confession, God, I messed up today, like praise, there's nobody like you. And I'm just so glad that you are holy, like adoration, like all of these things. And it makes room for thanksgiving and supplication. Not only am I grateful for who you are, I'm grateful for what you've done for me. Then it leaves the door open to ask for what you need. I need help today. I need peace today. I need deliverance from this situation. And then because of the virtue of prayer, because of just the scientific nature of prayer, you emerge from that purposeful positioning different. You emerge different. You emerge with hope. You emerge with new perspective. And for those who are people of faith, you know that regardless of your words, you have God who hears your words before you speak them, knows your hearts before the word comes to you. And there's a sense of knowing you've got a companion in the journey. And that's where prayer begins to make a difference. That's just at the very core.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah.
So the next question says, and I don't know that I understand it, but I'll read it and we'll try to address it.
Okay.
How do you create accountability, spiritual partners?
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, accountability.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Because every friend isn't an accountability partner.
No.
So, okay, first of all, let's talk about why you need accountability. Let's go back to trauma and let's go back to naming our suffering, and let's go back to lament.
Yeah.
When we lament together, when we share together, we have community that shares that pain with us. It's a beautiful thing to lament together and to have someone else carry pain with you.
Mhm.
Accountability is when you can ask someone, can you please help me to be my best self? So don't just carry the pain with me all the time, but help me be my best self. Sometimes that means remind me that I don't have to rush beyond this,
Yeah.
like you and I do for each other. And sometimes that means, listen, you've been here for a long time,
Get up.
and it is time to take a shower. It is time to wash your
What's
face,
wrong?
put some clothes on, and go outside. So, how can you find accountability partners? Well, I think the first thing you can do is pray. And I think, again, there's something powerful in just asking for what you need, to say, I need someone in my life who can walk with me and hold me accountable, help me to be my best self. And if
Mhm.
you're a person of faith, be my best self before God. So there's a way you can pray and ask for that person. And then you can really begin to think about people who you don't mind hearing a word from. There's certain people in your life that if they told you something critical, you wouldn't be able to handle it because they're always critical. But then there are
Right.
other people who love you enough that when they say something critical, you can receive it. And those are the kinds of people that you want in your life as accountability partners, as people who love you and who can also tell you the truth.
Speaking of tense moments of receiving critical feedback,
Yeah.
uninvited, Thanksgiving is coming up. And
Yes. Yeah.
so CDC recommendations is that we not get together. But how would you advise people to kind of use this time of gratitude to
Yeah.
recenter? And
Yeah.
what message would you give to those who really are gonna maybe have trouble seeing the joy
Mm.
in the holidays? Like
Mhm.
my daddy passed away in August, and so a lot of people are maybe struggling with the loss of
Yes.
somebody.
Yes.
How would you what would you give them as an encouraging word?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing I would say is don't be afraid of that pain. Sometimes anticipating a holiday can be more painful than the holiday itself. You know, the days leading up to Thanksgiving, to Christmas, to Kwanzaa can be painful, especially when you've suffered a loss. So I would say to those who are anticipating that pain, don't hide from it, don't run from it. Trauma is a tricky thing because if you don't name it, own it, and face it, it will catch you by surprise. It'll catch you in moments that you think you've gotten over and moved on. It'll choke you up and catch you by surprise. So I would say, don't be afraid of that pain and prepare for it. And how do you prepare for pain? You can prepare for that pain by being intentional about what you do for that day. We talked about the meaning and value that comes from gratitude. This might be the perfect season to serve, to pack a few bags, to send someone a meal, to write a few thank you cards. On this Thanksgiving, I'm writing out the list of all the things I'm thankful for, and you're on my list. This might be the perfect time to prepare a meal and drop it off at someone's house, or prepare a meal for a shelter, because homelessness didn't stop in COVID-19. Shelters will be overflowing in COVID-19. Domestic violence has shot through the roof. So we have children and women and men and families who need our care. So we can be intentional about that. But we can also carve out time and space for lament, to light a candle, to remember those we've lost, to cry and to share funny stories, and to find a way to grieve and lament together. Because in that, we can actually surprise ourselves and create spaces of healing together, maybe even in unexpected ways.
Man,
Yeah.
Nicole, we've like almost run out of time. Actually,
Oh
we
my
haven't.
gosh.
I don't know. We don't have time limits on our conversations. We have
Yeah.
more questions, but no time to cover them. So um, let me say this. I appreciate you. I
I
thank
appreciate
you.
you.
Like, thank you so much for sharing in my journey and being a kind of sister would, my blood sisters endorse you. So
That's
and I hope yours
amazing.
endorse you too.
Absolutely.
So I just really want to appreciate you and thank you for just taking time out to kind of share. And we hope that somebody somewhere just got a few words, a few nuggets that would help them thrive through trauma. I want to just mention the Peace and Purpose Conference retreat. So Peace and Purpose retreat will have 3 treks, mind, body, and soul, and will feature 20 engagements for you to explore, including everything, including financial health and awareness, as well as all kinds of areas of your life, spiritual meditation and different areas. It's December 20th. It is, I know I'm fumbling it, Munson. Thank you for jumping in here. It's December 20th. It's virtual. And you can register at peaceandpurpose.co. Peaceandpurpose.co. Munson, do you want to say something about the retreat?
No, I really don't. I think Peace and Purpose will get to it. I want to make sure that everyone knows they can support. I want to thank you and Minister, Reverend Dr. Nicole Martin for such a phenomenal healing moment. We want to see these books. For all of you, go out. Please go direct to her website. They'll be on blackbookstore.com. But this is what's happening. Grab your devotional and Made to Lead. Thank you, Ashley. So for me and the entire family at Rolling Out, we want to thank you ladies for putting it together. The last thing for me is just in short, because I need a quick blast, Reverend Dr. Nicole Martin, shame and guilt, overcoming these traumatic emotions is key. And we've got 4 minutes. And I know a lot of people are trying to figure out shame and guilt in this moment, purge. But if you can give us at least a methodology for overcoming shame and guilt at this moment.
Man, that's so heavy. Okay, so technically speaking, shame and guilt is often that which is put on us from the outside. And every once in a while, we begin to take it on the inside. So we have to name the areas of shame and start to unpack it piece by piece, because you cannot thrive when you're living under the noose of shame. And I say that so clearly because shame and guilt can suffocate you, as a way of suffocating us. Shame is a part of culture. It's a part of our hierarchy. It's a part of our family traditions. We see shame playing out in a number of ways where people usually grow up as a child with shame kind of pushed on them. And then as we become adults, we start to take it on ourselves. So it's a matter of being able to name and unpack the shame. And sometimes shame and guilt can be healed by what they call a replacement theory. How do I replace the thoughts of shame with thoughts of hope, thoughts of empowerment and affirmation? Sometimes that's just by the words we say. When the voice of shame comes in, you're not good enough. You don't deserve this. Who are you to take on this role, this place, this timing? We have to replace that with the word of truth. I am a child of God. I am the head and not the tail. I am above and not beneath. I am more than a conqueror. And then the guilt, we know that guilt does not come from true love. True love does not give us guilt. So if we're feeling guilty about something, then maybe there's something deep within that we need to release. That's actually the best part about guilt, Munson, that I believe. It's the ability to release it. Guilt can and should be released. So when we can get to the source that causes us guilt, we can release those things and replace it with positive affirmations. I hope that makes sense.
No, it's great. It was a true healing. I just want people that are in COVID that really are contracting it because they go see a person and they feel guilty about not being there for a wedding. You don't have to feel guilty.
You do not.
You don't have to make and risk your life to be it. And I want people to be able to, even at funerals or loved ones, it just wasn't enough to say goodbye. And I want people to be able to not feel ashamed or that you
Yes.
weren't there at the hospital, at the bedside,
Mhm.
in moments in COVID that we traditionally would have been next to a person,
That's right.
would have been all in the room.
Yeah.
And, for other people, it's a shame because I can't do this for you now because many people are unemployed. So
Yep.
you're unemployed and you don't have enough, but
Mhm.
God is enough. And I want
That's
people
right.
to understand that there's a universal God that's
Yes.
giving you all that you need. So don't take shame and guilt. They're not your friends
There
and
you
they're
go.
not the voice of God. So I want to thank you all for coming to this phenomenal journey session. I listened and I watched. I hope that it's a healing, but I hope that it helps the mind, body, and soul of everyone. Be sure to follow these ladies, Minister Jessica L. Johnson, excellent job. And of course, the phenomenal Reverend Dr. Nicole Martin, who you should follow her, pick up her books today. She's been a blessing. You've both been a blessing to us on this journey session for peace and purpose. Thank you so much. And we'll have more rolling out peace and purpose journey sessions coming soon. See you soon.